And we have Black History is 100 years old this year. It started as Black History Week, and so it's a year of milestones. So 100 for the commemoration, national, and it is in the law, it's part of the law, and it's also, and then 75 years later, which is 2001, the Groveway community put together a Black History program, and the mayor attended the event and fell in love with it, and who would have thought that Roswell, the city of Roswell, would be supporting 25 years later Black history. Yeah. Supporting and sponsoring events. And also too, something happened last week that was history making. And sometimes people say, why is Black History in February? Oh, it's the shortest month. But there's a significance to the February. It is Abraham Lincoln's birthday and Frederick Douglass. And Carter G. Woodson, one of the founders of Black History, they were already celebrating. And we lost a hero of Black history, Jesse Jackson. Normally, you get to have a moment of silence, but I want you all to have a moment of shout out of something, a saying that Jesse Jackson said. So just go ahead, shout it out. I am somebody. Yeah, I am somebody is the most popular one. But there's another one that he said was pretty much, don't look down on somebody unless you're reaching down to help them up. So just keep that in mind. And what you can remember is like years from now, when people say, do you know when Jesse Jackson died? I don't know. And you can say, that lady said Black History Month. So you may not remember the day, but so he's right there with Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. So I just wanted to get that in. And we have 25 events this month, and our events, I always say, they weren't just willy-nilly put together. Thanks to the staff, Al and Issa, they're very thoughtful. We have 5 pillars. They have to fall into one or more of the categories: art, education, culture, performance, and history. And tonight, you will get some history, cultural, maybe not the performance unless she dances. Okay. All right, so also would like to recognize any of the Roots Committee that's here tonight. Some of them may have been outside greeting you all. Just stand up and be acknowledged. And thank you. And we work on this for a year, so if anyone would like to join us for next year, just let us know and we can do so. We'll be starting having meetings in April for next February. And anybody from the city council, although the city council meeting, so probably no one is here, but just give the city of Roswell another hand clap. And with that, now I'd like to turn things over to the Atlanta authors, Deanna Smith.
All right, everybody's here. I'm so excited. Good evening and welcome to this evening's Atlanta Authors event in concert in cooperation with Roswell Roots. This is just such a joy every month when we get to do that, or every year when we get to do it in February. And were any of you here for last year's Roswell Roots author event? Okay, we have, maybe 5 or 6 people that were here. So that was an extraordinary event with author Michael Thurman talking about his book about James Oglethorpe, the founder of Georgia and previous governor of Georgia back in the colonial days. And it was such a fun event. And he has gone on and is now running for governor of Georgia. And I was like, wow, one of our Atlanta authors is now running for governor. Of course, a lot of people are running for governor, but so I'm thinking if the trend continues, that maybe Terah will end up maybe in the White House. Or, yeah, why not? Or maybe more realistically, be like a Nobel Prize or a Pulitzer Prize, something along those lines. Anyways, yes, so we're very excited to have everyone here tonight to welcome Terah Shelton Harris, Target's first author of the year. I mean, they really knew what they were doing when they picked this book too. Because it's just now coming out, and this is her second book, but I have to tell you, it was an extraordinary experience reading this book. I was fortunate enough to get an advance copy of the book, and I was able to read the book, and I had to tell you the word Wildflowers is in the title, and it really describes her writing style, because there are just little sprinklings of exquisiteness throughout this book. She has an amazing writing style, and I was telling one of the ladies here tonight that I'm a writer too, and I read this book and I go, why can't I write that? It just, there are writers, we get a lot of writers and authors in here, and then there are writers. And I'm telling you, her writing style is unique to itself. Like, I can't say Terah writes like some other author. She has a unique voice and a unique style that is so magical and beautiful, and I just can't even tell you how much I enjoyed reading it. And I did want to read one line, and this was about dead people, okay? So, which featured prominently in the book. The people we love don't disappear. I know that now. They stay with us, quietly, in the corners of our days, lingering in ways we don't always understand, unseen, but always present. I just love that description. It put it in a way that made it so powerful for me that, yes, that's exactly my experience of like dead people, So yeah, I'm excited, and we're going to hear more about that. But Atlanta Authors, back to my committee, Atlanta Authors, has been holding author events here at the Roswell Library across the street, the Cultural Arts Center here, the Roswell Adult Recreation Center down the way, and virtually on Zoom for the past 17 years. And we are so thrilled to help Roswell Roots celebrate 25 years. I mean, give them a hand. They've been doing this a long time. We've been doing it 17 years. They've been doing it 25 years here in Roswell, trying to make Roswell a better place. So my boyfriend and I are blues fans, so I got tickets to this blues thing coming up for, what is his name? The Chicago Blues event. William Bluesman Reed and the Duke Joint Jukes. I cannot wait to hear these guys. So we have tickets to that, and we're only like $12. It was so cheap. So if you want to come and see some great blues right here, get your tickets because they still have plenty. And our Atlanta Authors group, we hold like 4 or 5 events a year. And we hold some great author events, and our next event is going to be on Saturday, March 14th at 2 p.m. Oh yeah, here we go. Robert Gwaltney is going to be in conversation with author Lo Patrick, and he's fabulous. We've had him before as one of our in conversation authors, discussing his debut novel, his debut novel was A Cicada Tree, which I read, and oh my God, that is so creepy book. I mean, like psychic stuff going on, like with this little girl who kind of controls the cicadas, and they sort of attack this town, and it was just a really interesting book. I loved it. But he's got a new book coming out called Sing Down the Moon, so that's going to be a great event. We hope you can, those of you who have book clubs, tell your book clubs. It'd be a great opportunity for y'all to get together, have dinner, come down, do this. Or afternoon, 2 p.m. So have lunch, come down, do this. And he has been awarded the Somerset Award for Literary and Contemporary Fiction. So it's a free event, so we'll help you do that. And then signed copies of the Terah Shelton Harris's novels, which, by the way, did you see the printing on the edges of that? I mean, this is a stunning book. I'm afraid I did not pre-order mine, and I have to go down to Bookmiser and get a copy because I think they're running out. But signed copies are available if you have haven't gotten yours already, you can purchase them right outside in the auditorium, or you can go to Bookmiser, which is located at 3822 Roswell Road in East Cobb, less than a 10-minute drive from most of Roswell. And the good news is, unfortunately, Bookmiser has been closed for the last 6 months or so since they had a fire and smoke damage in their little strip mall there. But the good news is, February 28th, they are reopening. That's a Saturday, right? Saturday the 28th. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine what they have gone through. She's had this sort of pop-up store going. They've been remodeling the existing store. They've been, trying to do books on order. So I know you're going to be greatly happy to have that. And I've already got tickets for the author event on that day as well. We're having a true crime event that's going to be really exciting. And I'm a huge fan of that genre as well. Okay, so you can also order online at bookmiser.net. And in addition, the Friends of the Roswell Library, right here across the street, are having a book sale coming up on March 27th, 28th, and 30th at the Roswell Library. If you've never been to their book sale, it's fabulous, like $1, $2 books, really wonderful prices. So you'll want to go by there at the end of March. And before we introduce Anel, I want you to be sure and turn off your cell phones if you haven't done so already. And now to introduce Terah, we have Anel Gerson, our very own bookmiser.
Thank you, Deanna, and thank you, all of you, for the privilege of your time tonight. I know we're ready to get on to the show and hear Terah, but her journey is remarkable, so bear with me as I go through a few of the highlights because they are worth mentioning. So it is my honor to introduce Terah Shelton Harris, author of One Summer in Savannah, Long After We Are Gone, and the book we are here to celebrate tonight, Where the Wildflowers Grow. Terah did not begin her journey as a novelist, as many of you know. Like many artists, she wrestled with the age-old fear of the starving writer, so she chose a practical path. She majored in English at Troy University and built a successful career as a travel and a freelance writer. Her work has appeared in publications such as Women's Health, Every Day with Rachel Way, Backpacker, Catapult, Minority Nurse, and many others. Eventually, she became a librarian, overseeing the adult collection at her library. And even after publishing her first novel, she continued to balance both worlds, managing her library career while steadily building her life as a novelist, right up until the publication of her second book. But the roots of her writing journey reach back much further. A fifth-grade teacher once invited Terah to read her stories aloud to the class, allowing her to experience the magic of hearing her words land in the hearts of others. Years later, during a 3-month library closure amid COVID, and fueled by her lifelong love of reading and storytelling, Terah finally had the opportunity to fully commit. She quite literally put pen to paper. That's how she was. One imagines that beloved poet, Mary Oliver, would be proud of Terah's answer to her now famous question, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Readers have responded. Known for her poignant, bittersweet endings, Terah's novels have been recognized wildly. Selected, as you heard, as a Target Book Club pick, a Library Reads pick, a Kobo Best Book, a Together We Read selection, you get the idea. As Deanna mentioned, she was also the Target's first author of the year. And now, Where the Wildflowers Grow was named a most anticipated book of the year by Goodreads, Essence, Sunset, SheReads, BookBub, and more. As Library Journal beautifully noted in its review, themes of grief, betrayal, love, and trauma are navigated with Harris's signature compassion Her sentences and epiphanies will cause readers to pause, to fully digest the novel's insights and each character's metamorphosis. It is my great pleasure to welcome a writer who reminds us that courage, patience, and love of story can indeed answer the call of a wild and precious life. Please join me in welcoming Terah Shelton Harris.
My goodness. Is that me? Quick story before we get started while I set up this microphone. My husband, who is very supportive of his wife being on the road for 3 weeks, and so when I get home, he's like, how is it? Is it great? I was like, it's great. He'll say, because he'll be at work, he'll say, Macy's litter box needs to be changed. And that immediately brings me back out of the clouds of a beautiful introduction like that, back down to reality. So I'm going to start with a little reading first. I will tell you my story, and I will leave nothing out. I remember it all, even the memories I wish to forget. They enter without knocking. I should probably start the beginning, but it's not so easy to find. Beginnings are never where you think they are, where they should be, especially if you live 2 lives and known and in between. But if I must start, I'll start here with the truth. I owe you that much, and so much more. I was born to the last of the wilds. There's no other way to say it. I know because my father told me so. He knew because he watched the others die. He reminded me and my sister Lila of that all the time. Terrible thing to watch someone die, to be the survivor left to tell the story. Maybe that's why he spent his life trying to be something or someone else. Felt an obligation to keep the bloodline going. Maybe that's why Mama let him be, let us be, let history repeat itself with me. I was 12 when my father first heard the voices, the ancestors he called them. He carried their world on his shoulders. It's no wonder he heard their voices too. They whispered all sorts of things to him, instructions, to-do lists, commands, and he listened. Did every one, roll the dice thrown to him, and bet every dollar given to him. Mama didn't hear the voices, but she heard Daddy's loud. She loved him with an intensity that bordered on worship, and that would later warp my understanding of love. She carried him on her shoulders and dragged us at her feet. He loved her for it, gave her flowers and fists to prove it. Mama and Daddy were the first weapons we knew, not the harsh realities that awaited us outside of our tiny trailer in South Carolina. They didn't know what to do with us, nor did they want to know. They loved us, more or less, but they could have easily hugged us or hurt us, fed us or starved us. They treated us as currency that they traded, spent, and sometimes saved, but only for later, puppets on their string. It was this tenderness and pain that led to the ruin of my family. We are survivors, Daddy often said, and yet none of them survived. So that's the beginning, a prologue of Where the Wildflowers Grow. Just to kind of get you an idea of the heaviness of this book. So what is this book about? Where the Wildflowers Grow is a contemporary novel centered around Lee Wiles. And who is Lee? Lee is an escaped convicted felon. So at the beginning of this book, you have Lee Wiles on the prison transport bus headed to prison. And the bus that she's on careens off the road and kills everyone except for her. And so she's at the bottom of this ravine, and she realized, oh no, this is happening again. Because this is not the first incident that she's been involved in, that she was the only survivor. And so she realized her father's right. She is a survivor, because that's the way he raised her and her sister. So she realizes, I've never lived a life at all. I've only lived a life of survival. So she makes a decision that she's not going to wait for the prison officials to find her, that she is going to walk off and begin living her life. As luck would have it, she meets a hunky flower farmer named Jackson, because of course you have to have a hunky flower farm. And he offers her a job on his flower farm in rural Alabama. And she thinks this is a perfect place for her to hide out while she figures out her next move. But what she doesn't expect to find is the found family that's already living on the farm. And so there, she undergoes this profound journey of self-discovery. And of course, she falls in love with the hunky about a farmer named Jackson. But of course, her past catches up with her. And one day, when tragedy strikes yet again, she has to decide what it is that she can truly survive. So that's the story. And so I am often asked, what is your process? How do you start these books? Well, for me, my books always start with a theme. And so I realized, okay, what is going to be the theme of this book? So One Summer in Savannah, the theme of that book was forgiveness. But the secondary theme was grief. My second book, Long After We're Gone, the theme of that book was letting go. But the secondary theme was grief. And I realized I'm running away from writing about grief. And so I said, okay, we're gonna write about grief. And as luck would have it, I did an event with a grief therapist. And I said to her, oh, I am going to write a book about grief. And she laughed. She said, Terah, you know how layered grief is? She said, what kind of grief? What kind? And I didn't know. And so from there started a bunch of conversations with her to unpack who this character was. And so in my questions, I asked her, I said, what are some layers of grief? What are some themes that you see in your patients? And she said, two kept coming up to her and talking to me. The first one was survivor's guilt. The guilt, the grief that comes with being the only person left. And the second one was an even darker side of grief, because grief is so layered and complicated. But she spoke on the kind of grief that is hard when you miss that person in your life. And how do you grieve that person who has hurt you, but yet whose loss in your life has left this void? The second part was, how do you grieve someone for whom closure is not possible? And so those were the two types of grief that we kind of narrowed down. And so I thought, okay, well, we have a theme now, so I know where to go from here. So from there, I said, okay, who's this character? Who is Lee? So all of my books are loosely based on real life circumstances and events. And so I like to wait for inspiration to come, to hit me. And it came in the form of an article about an 18-year-old girl in Colorado who was invisible on paper. And I thought, how is that possible? She was 18 years old and she was born off the grid. And I discovered that when you are born off the grid, you have 10 days to report your birth. If your birth is not reported, you do not receive two very important documents. Anybody know what those documents are? Wow, y'all know. Okay. I had no idea. Social Security card and a birth certificate. So, as we know, we can do nothing in this country without those two very important documents. But also, in the eyes of the government, this person does not exist. And so I thought, oh my goodness. And so this 18-year-old girl didn't even realize that she did not exist on paper. She was raised completely off the grid, homeschooled. And so she wanted to go to college. And she unfortunately faced a bunch of battles because she technically did not exist. And so she had to prove her birth. And I thought, this is a great character. This is a great thing to pull into this story. So Lee and her sister Lila are non-entities. That is what it's called. You are technically do not exist in the eyes of the government. So I remember when my grandmother was, when I was young, my grandmother kept her Bible. And in the Bible, in the very front, she kept all the birthdays. And that's how they kept track of who was born then. But unfortunately, Lee and Lila did not have that with their parents because their father rejected government inclusion. He did not believe in government inclusion. And so he raised them completely and solely off the grid. And so Lee realizes that she does not exist. And so this feeds into her grief because there are two thinly veiled mysteries throughout this book. The first one is, why is Lee in prison? And the second one is, what happened to her family? And so realizing and reading this article about this 18-year-old girl, I thought this is an amazing way to raise awareness to this topic of non-entities because more and more people are being born off the grid, more and more people are rejecting government inclusion. And that's kind of something that I like to do in my books. I like to raise awareness to certain topics. And so now at the beginning of this, I have my character, her name is Lee, and now I have a theme of grief, and now I'm starting to flesh out her story a little bit. And so I said, okay, well, she is an escaped convicted felon. Where can she realistically hide out for 9 months and not be caught? And so my husband is an Alabama country boy through and through. I am a Midwest, I am a Southerner by marriage, not by birth. And so I moved to Alabama with him 15 years ago. But this man loves the state of Alabama, proud of it. And so my other books were not in Alabama. And he said, you need to write a book and base it in Alabama. And I said, okay, so since you said that, where's a realistic place that a person can hide out off the grid for 9 months? And he immediately said, Gee's Bend. Anybody here a quilter or familiar with Gee's Bend? Yeah, okay, that sounds wonderful. Now, I have not been to Gee's Bend. And so I said, okay, I am a librarian by trade, so a problem that I have is I love research. And so I kind of get lost and pull myself into the research. But I also love doing research trips. So this was an opportunity for me to take an amazing research trip to Gee's Bend because I needed the inspiration, but I also needed to see the area. So when I go somewhere, I drag my sister-in-law with me. She is my shotgun partner. And so when I started looking up hotels in Gee's Bend, because it's about 6 hours from where I live, at the bottom of the hotel contact form in the directions, it said, print your MapQuest directions because your internet will be spotty. And I thought, okay, we don't even have to go because this is basically what I need. Have you ever seen that in a hotel or any place that told you to print your directions because your Wi-Fi wouldn't work, your data wouldn't work? I thought, okay, this is good. This is a sign. I need this. And so this area, Gee's Bend, we arrive at Gee's Bend, and I want to just kind of describe to you, for those who are not familiar with it, where it is. It is in Alabama's Black Belt. The county seat is Camden. And between Camden and Gee's Bend, there's the Alabama River. And so I was doing research, and I discovered that there are 2 ways that you can get to Gee's Bend. You can take a ferry from Camden, which is a 10-minute ferry ride, or you can drive all the way around because Gee's Bend is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So picture a U, and in the middle of that U is Gee's Bend. So in order to get there, we have to drive all the way around. 45 minutes one way, 45 minutes the other way. And so I thought, oh, we're going to take a ferry, of course. And so the ferry that you take, you can drive your car on or you can walk. And so we drove the car on, and it's such a beautiful 10-minute ferry ride to there. So we're in my sister-in-law's Jeep, and she said, where are we going? So we went for the airing of the quilts. This is an annual quilt festival that they have, which I'll get back to in a second. I said, before we go there, let's just drive around. I just need the inspiration. And so we start driving around, and we end up on this dirt road. And so I said, no, it's not here, keep going. Because I'm looking for a potential place that would be Jackson's Flower Farm. Because of course, there are no flower farms on Gee's Bend. And so I'm looking for this empty field. And so we're driving around. And finally, after about 5 or 10 minutes, my sister-in-law turns to me and she says, Terah, we have no cell service out here. Where are we going? And I was like, I just need 5 more minutes. And I'm looking, and there's nothing out here. Nothing, just a dirt road and just trees. And I said, just go 5 more minutes. I'm gonna see it in 5 more minutes. And then right at 5 minutes, we drive and the field just opens. It's a beautiful place. And it's just, I said, this is it. And so we get out and I take all these inspiration photos and I was like, this is it. This is where Jackson's Flower Farm is gonna be. And so then we go back to the airing of the quilts. And there's just no way that I could set this book in Gee's Bend and not talk about the quilts. It was just impossible. And so Jackson's grandmother is one of the original quilts. And so this area is known for its quilts and its unique designs of these quilts. And so during the airing of the festival, they put their quilts out to air them out. And so there's a bunch at the festival, but then along the road, a lot of people who have quilts, some of the original quilts, they will put theirs out. And so we got a chance to just kind of drive around and look at these different quilts. And so we were coming around a bend, and there were the prettiest, the best looking quilts I've ever seen. And I told my sister-in-law, stop. And there was 2 men standing out there. And so we walk up, and we introduced ourselves, and I was telling him, okay, I'm gonna write a book, it's gonna be based here. And he was telling me all about his grandmother's quilts. And he told me this story. He told me, I said, where does she pack them? Where do you keep, how do you store your quilts? And he said, he told me this story. He said, my grandmother stores her quilts in a refrigerator box. So picture a really high refrigerator box. And he said, when I was a little boy, in order to smash them down, she would pick him up and put him in there. And he smashed them down. And I looked at him and I said, that is going in my book. I was like, I hope you don't mind, because it's those little details. This is why I love research trip. It's those little things like that that makes it original. And so he tells me that, and then I asked him, I was like, would you ever sell these quilts? And he was like, no. And there were people out there who was trying to convince him of it. And I, at one point, thought that I was gonna buy a quilt until I saw how much they were. Oh my goodness. And the one that I saw was $35,000. And I was like, yeah, okay, we're just gonna get a magnet or a postcard because yes, we cannot. And there were people who he was negotiating with back and forth. So I know it's sold for more than that. I mean, these quilts are world famous. They're hung, some of them are hung in the Smithsonian and different museums all around the world. And so now I am feeling really good about G's Bend. I thought this is so perfect a place for her to hide out because it has to be realistic. I could not have her in a major city. And so this area is very, very cool. So that served as the inspiration for the setting. So let's recap. We have our story, we have our main character, we have our theme, we have the setting. Now what? So the flower farm. And so this book is probably the most literary that I've written. So that means it's more character driven. So you have commercial fiction that is plot driven. So picture there's a bomb on a bus and you have to figure out which bus that bomb is. So it's less about characters and more about plot. Upmarket fiction, which is what I normally write, is a combination of both, a plot, but also centered around characters. This book is just centered around characters, and so that would be more literary leaning. But you still do have two little threads that's pulling you through, which is why she's in prison, what happened to her family. And so I knew that this book needed something else. It needed a secondary character. So what is that secondary character? The flower farm. And so I started thinking about the journey, the healing journey that Lee was going to undergo and what that meant. And if I was going to use this as a character, how that character can symbolize her healing journey. And I discovered flowers. We have gardeners in here? Yes, gardeners. So I said, okay, I'm going to set this book on the flower farm. Because if you think about flowers, you think about healing. What is one thing that they both have in common? That it takes time. And so I said, okay, we are going to use the flower farm as a symbol, as to be symbolic for her healing journey. And so now, guess what? I love research. So guess what? It's time for me to go back to the research. So I bought a book of flowers because I knew that I wanted to equate her to a particular type of flower. So I buy this really thick book of flowers, and every night I would just flip through it. And I came across dahlias. Does anybody grow dahlias around here? Oh my goodness. I love dahlias after this book. And so there's this scene in the book with Lee. And imagine she arrives at this flower farm and she is a survivor. So she has a very hard exterior shell. And so, but the guys that's on the flower farm are very patient with her. But finally, Jackson realizes that she is shouldering this trauma. And he begins to encourage her to work on herself. And he uses the example of how to grow dahlias and what happens to dahlias after they die. And once I read this, I thought, I have to put this in a book. And so for those who are not familiar with dahlias, So dahlias are beautiful one day, and then the next day after their first frost, they immediately die. And there's a scene in this book where Lee is marveling over the fact that the dahlias that were so beautiful the day before are now dead. And she says to Jackson, they're dead. And he says to her, just because it looks like it's dead does not mean that it is. And so that's very symbolic for her journey and who she is. And so he says, it has to die first. And so in order to die, in terms of healing, is you admitting that you have an issue, that you have a problem. And the next part of that is, so you have to cut back the dahlias. You have to cut back all the foliage. And so he was telling her, you have to strip away everything that you knew before, everything that you thought that you were, right? That was stripping away, stripping yourself down to be bare. And then he tells her, you have to get on your hands and knees and dig in the dirt and dig up the tuber. And so she's down in the dirt and she's digging up the tuber. And she says, where is it? I can't find it. And he says, you have to keep digging. And that is unearthing whatever it is that your trauma that you have. You have to bring it up. And so she finally brings up this dahlia tuber and she says, now what? And he says, we have to keep it alive all winter long. We have to nurture it. We have to water it. We have to take care of it. And that is the constant work that we have to do on ourselves whenever we are on a healing journey. And then what is so wonderful about this dahlia process is you take those tubers and in the spring you put them back in the ground and guess what? They bloom again. So her journey is very much related to flowers. So there's a lot of flower language in this book. So, it was just me and my opportunity just to write about flowers. So as you're reading, keep in mind that the flowers, the description is very symbolic for Lee's journey. I also got a chance to visit Flower Farm. Now, I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I don't think I thought about flowers being grown on a farm before. And so I thought, I have to visit a flower farm because I love doing research trips. And I got a chance to speak to several flower farmers about the entire process of growing flowers. And so I had all these notebooks of flowers and G-span and a flower farm, and my husband said, how much of this is actually going to end up in a book? And I was like, maybe 5% of it. But I can't help it. You know, you just fall in love with flowers. And so in my flower research, I have to brag on Alabama for a minute. I know y'all are Georgia people, but I have to brag on Alabama for a minute. But Alabama has a very rare Cahaba lily. It's a very rare flower. And this flower is grown in the Cahaba River and is very resilient as well. It blooms from Mother's Day to Father's Day. It blooms in the water overnight for just one day. And when I discovered that that was in Alabama, of course I had to take a research trip up there and check out this flower. It is so beautiful. And if after this is over or while you're reading the book, I would please encourage you to Google the Cahaba lily because it is beautiful to see it being grown into this water. And so actually the professor that I speak about in this book, his name is Dr. Jack Davenport, that he is the foremost authority on the Cahaba lily. And we had a bunch of conversations and he allowed me to use his real name, so that is his real name. But I encourage you, if you love flowers, to take a trip over to West Block and between Mother's Day and Father's Day to be able to see this beautiful flower. Okay, so this is still my process, right? We have a character, we have our theme, we have our setting, we have flowers now to speak about. So what's left? How about another thing? Found family. Does anybody love the found family trope? I love the found family trope. And I love the found family trope because I don't always believe that blood is thicker than water. And I have always been drawn to stories where people find each other and connect to each other through a shared experience. And so I understood that I needed Lee to have a family because, again, one of the mysteries of this book is what happened to her family. And so she will last a while. She's the only one left. And so I knew I wanted her to experience having a family again. And so when she arrives on this farm, she is somewhat combative. So Jackson has a couple of rules for people who live on the farm. And one one of the rules is they eat breakfast and dinner together. But of course, Lee does not go to breakfast and dinner because she realizes a couple things. She realizes that she put them all at risk by being there because she is an escaped convicted felon. But on the other hand, she's not used to trusting anyone. She doesn't have not had a family. And so she does not know what to do with that. And so when she arrives there, she discovers that she's not the only one that has been healing from her childhood trauma. That all three of them have had and unpacked their childhood traumas. And so I thought this would be a great way of having someone to relate to. And so she gets there, she realizes that, you know what, they've healed themselves from their trauma. And so in my conversation with the grief therapist, I asked her, I said, how would you advise me to write Lee and be true to Lee's trauma? And I said, I am setting this book in a very rural area. And she said to me, she says, Terah, in a perfect world, Lee would come sit and speak with me. She would come sit on the couch and she would speak with me. She says, but therapy is not available for everyone all the time. And I said, so what would you suggest to make it realistic for her to heal? And she said, nature. And I said, I love this because of this very rural setting. And so thus started the idea that Lee was going to unpack and address her trauma using nature. And so I asked her, I said, what are some techniques and some things that you recommend? And so she recommended grounding. Does anybody here ground? Have ground before? I had never heard of grounding. And I live in a house in the middle of the woods. I ground all the time now. But before then, I had no idea. And she taught me that there's a connection between taking off your shoes, your socks, and walking barefoot in the ground and pulling your body back to earth. And we joke around and we say stuff like, go touch grass, but that came from somewhere. That came from grounding. So I thought, that's beautiful. So that's one of the things, when Lee is finally ready to unpack her trauma, that's one of the things that Jackson encouraged her to do, is to ground herself. And they take these walks without their shoes on and just ground themselves. So I said, well, what else? And she said, yoga. Now, the yoga one I knew. She said, yoga helps you reconnect and become one with your body again. And so when Lee is on this flower farm, as you can imagine, it's a lot of work working on a flower farm. And so she's sore, plus on top of the fact that she did survive a bus crash. And so she does have these aches and pains. And so she's complaining to the two other guys that live on the flower farm. Their name is Tib and Luke. And so she's complaining to Tib because he's the one that's teaching her yoga. And she says to him, I'm so sore. And he says, that is a sign that you are alive, that soreness. And that your muscles are ripped because you've worked them. But when they grow back, they will grow back much stronger and better. And so this is how she reconnects with her body, because she had such a disconnect, because all she's done her whole life is keep herself alive. She never thought about her own body. And so the other thing that they take in is meditation, sitting with it for a moment. And this one I was really careful with, because meditation can be very dangerous for people, because by sitting down and being quiet, you let those thoughts, negative things come. So she was really great at helping me be able to write, because Lee undergoes a couple of meditation sessions that does not go very well for her. And so meditation is that other one. It is sitting in your trauma and being at peace with it. And then the last one, which really surprised me, was chopping wood. Does anybody know that chopping wood was a way of healing? I had no idea. And so one of the things that the guys do, they chop wood. And so I said, okay, you're gonna have to explain to me the chopping wood for healing. And she says, it's energy transfer. It is you holding the axe, and all of your frustration, all your anger is transferred to that axe. And then when you come down on the wood, you're transferring it out. And I just thought that was so beautiful. Like, I'd never heard of these things. Now, of course, using nature to heal is not something that everyone can do, but they have no choice. This is how these guys have healed from their traumas. One of them had a very abusive father, and the other two, Jackson and Tib, were in foster care. So you know the stories about some people being in foster care. But they didn't have access to therapy, but these were the things that they did to help them with theirs. And so they encouraged her to do these things. And so, but before that, they just accept her for who she is, where she is. because they see her and they understand who she is as a person. So I just completely love the found family trope in this book. And so we have, to recap, we have a character, we have a theme, we have a setting, we have the flower farm, we have these guys, we have nature as healing. Now, to the good stuff, the hunky flower farmer. And so, okay, so I have been seeing this book online being tagged as a romance. It is not a romance. So for anyone that reads romance, a romance novel has to have two things. The center of this book, the idea, the main point of a book, of a romance book, must be the romance itself. That is not this book. The main point of this book is Lee's healing journey. The other part that a romance must have is a happily ever after. And so I will not say any more on the ending, but this book has a bittersweet ending, I would say that. And so, but in my discussions with the Greek therapist, her name is Megan, and I asked her, I said, she says, do you have Lee fall in love? And I was very shocked at that, because I did not want this book to turn into a romance. I really want to center Lee unpacking and addressing her trauma. And she says, oh, Terah, love is healing. And I love that she said that. I wrote that down. I had that over my laptop, that love is healing. And I said, okay, how do you do this? You have this escaped convicted felon, this very hard exterior. How organically do I allow herself to fall in love with Jackson? And that is built through Jackson himself, a very patient man. He accepted her for who she was, where she was. He challenged her and encouraged her, because of course he could see that she had trauma, but he encouraged her to work on herself. And when she finally did that, he was still patient with her. But of course, when she first meets Jackson at a flower farm, at a flower market, she has this immediate connection to him. But because she's only lived a life of survival, she doesn't think anything of it, because she doesn't have a good example of love prevailing. She had a very absentee father, a very abusive mother, so she does not have any examples of love. But Jackson is the love and gives her the love that she has never received. And so when she falls in love eventually with him, she's almost surprised at it, because she has never allowed herself to be open and vulnerable, because to fall in love is to be what? Vulnerable. And so as a survivor, she would have never been vulnerable enough to fall in love. And so I love the love story in this book so much, because it is a sign of the healing and all the work that she does on herself to reach and to get to that place. Okay, so we have a book now. We have a book now. And so what are the key takeaways that I want people to have from this book? There are several. I have dedicated this book to survivors. And I just want to read a little bit, like a paragraph of the author's note. It says, Where the Wildflowers Grow is dedicated to survivors, the ones who have survived unimaginable horrors, the ones born in unusual circumstances who have started life at less than zero, the ones who have taken a slap from life and kept on going. You are more than what you have survived. Let me say that again. You are more than the sum of your struggles, and your worth is not defined by the battles you fought, the pain you've endured, or the scars you carry. That's what I want. That's one of the takeaways that I want people to know. That you are more than what you have survived. Lee discovers that she is more than just being a survivor. And that's what I want people to take away. I want people to also take away the idea of surviving versus living. Unfortunately for Lee, she was at the bottom of this ravine, and she realizes that she has never lived a life. She has never made choices. Everything that was given to her, every choice that she made was told to her. And so she realizes that I've never lived a life. I've only lived a life of survival. And so that's what I want people to think about when you read this book. Are you living your life, or are you just surviving? And it's even a question that I had to ask myself. There have been moments in my life where I feel like I have been just surviving my life. I remember when my son was young, and I just got my husband out the door, and I was trying to get him to school, and I was trying to make it to work, and I was pulling him along, and he says, oh, look at the clouds. And I realized I hadn't looked at the sky in so long. But of course, he saw the clouds, but I realized just did not look up. And so I stopped for a minute, and I took 2 seconds, and I looked at the sky. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I have not looked at clouds. And my husband was like, okay. I'm like, no. That's important. Like, we have to take a moment to think about how we're living our life. Are we just falling into a routine over and over and over again? And so that's the other takeaway that I want you to ask yourself. Unfortunately for Lee, she discovered this very late, but she also was very adamant about the fact that she did not run away from the bushcraft, that she walked. And that was the first choice that she'd ever made in her life. And so I also want you to think about survivors and what it's like to survive and how you can live your life, being more than a survivor. But also that no matter what has happened to you, that you can still bloom. I've signed all the books, and there's a saying I'm saying in the books. It is bloom where you are planted, because Jackson says that to her. They're planting this new flower bed, and the dirt is not the best. And she says, well, where are we going to plant? And she says, right here. And she says, well, it doesn't look good. He says to her, flowers will bloom where they're planted. And that is a sign for people that no matter what happens, that you can still bloom, and even in the most unlikeliest places. Thank y'all so much.
All right, we are going to move. Is this one working? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We are going to move over here for some Q&A, and I have some prepared Q&A, but if you have Q&A as well, I'll definitely get those.
And I love questions.
Yes,
It could be
yes.
about my first book, it could be about my second book.
So I did want to ask, why pen to paper? Annelle mentioned that you like to write pen to paper, like that's old school. Like, is that true?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, I'm going to show my notebook.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Because there may be writers here, so I like to encourage writers. So I write all my books longhand first. So sorry, I've got stuff here. So this is my notebook.
Oh my.
I write in pencil with black wing pencils. If anybody know what a black wing pencil is, they are the best pencils. And so I just keep going and keep going. And I've tried to type, sit at a computer, type. I can't do it. I feel blocked. But just sitting down with a pencil and this notebook, it comes out and it flows so much better to me.
That's awesome. Okay, so your connection with dead people, I mentioned that quote from the book that I read, that I don't know if it's you or your character in the book, seems to have a really strong connection with people who have passed away.
Yeah, I love using symbolism. There's a lot of symbolism in this book, so I hope you guys really love that. But I love that you read that, because that's the way I see people when they leave us, that they never really leave us, that they hide like a ghost in the corners of our days. And I remember when I wrote that line, I thought, oh my God, that is a beautiful way of being able to write, like the people, they don't leave us, that they stay with us in some form.
So that's personal to you as well. I love that. You mentioned your book tour, and I saw that you're taking off from here and going like all the way up to Virginia. Is that?
Yeah, I'm in New Orleans tomorrow, and then Detroit, Toledo, and then South Carolina, then North Carolina, then Virginia.
And had you done that with all your other books, or is this a Target thing?
No, I've done this for all my books.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that's grueling. That's a lot of travel for a book tour. So you are a librarian, and I know we have a lot of library fans here in the audience, and some librarians too. Who's a librarian? I know Karen was a librarian. Lou was a librarian. This lady's a librarian.
There's one other person. Yay!
Yay, librarians! We love you. So what did you love most about being a librarian, and what do you miss most about having not being a librarian?
I miss helping people. I feel like as if I had a call to serve, and I feel like most librarians in this room will tell you, in order to do this job, you have to have this call to serve, to help people. And so that's one of the things that I miss the most, is helping people. I don't get to do that anymore. I am that person when someone asks someone in the grocery store, I'm like, okay, you can just come right over here. I don't work at the grocery store, but I want to help people. So it comes out some way.
That's awesome. Okay, well, let's see if someone else has some questions. Here we go. Okay, we have with us today the famous author, Emily Carpenter, author of Gothic Town, one of my favorite stand-up Emily. Yes.
So now I need to know how many notebooks make a book,
Okay.
and then who transcribes it for you.
So every book has a notebook. So this is the fourth book, my book 4. My book is coming out next year. So this is that one. And there's a couple of pieces of paper left, so that's why I'm carting that around. And I transcribe it.
Oh, you do?
I do, and it's double work, because you're a writer, you know, it's double work. But when I transcribe it, this is my opportunity to edit, because when I write, I don't stop. I keep writing. So even through the mess ups, I keep writing. So when I type it up, this is my opportunity to kind of edit.
That's your
Yeah.
This is so awesome. I cannot even tell you. I started out handwriting when I was writing, and then I thought, no, I'm wasting all this time because I have to do double the work, but I didn't think of doing it, editing it while you're typing it.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this lady want to stand up for me and tell us your name? And I know you're from the Atlanta Writers Group, but I know you're a writer.
I'm Claudia Lang Pitts, and I'm the writer of the book From Multimillionaire to the biography of Lorenzo Pitts Sr. to Millionaire. I'm sorry, Sharecropper to Multimillionaire. And it just came out recently. So check it out on Amazon.com. But my question to you, besides all these beautiful books that you have just put out, is that you write the end of the book first. You want to know what it is. I know you said you did a lot of research, but in doing that research, are you putting the book together? You know what the book is going to be all about? Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've already put it together in your head?
No, since you're a writer and the other writers, I'm a pantser. So a pantser, for those who are not in the writing world, is someone who just writes as they go along. So you have the plotters, who know from the beginning to the end where this book is, and then you have the pantsers. And those are the people that make it up by the seat of their pants, why they call pantsers. I am a pantser. But my book ideas, before I actually start writing them, they've probably lived in my head for about a year or so. So when I'm ready to write, I have most of it fully formed. And so for me, my process is I need to know how the book ends. And so in order to start the beginning. So I know how the book ends, then I do chapter 1, and then I just do whatever comes after that.
And I just wanted to point out that the author here has your daughters, granddaughters? Granddaughters who are, also we have an aspiring author. How old? 17.
Oh,
17
nice.
years old,
Very
and she's
nice.
here at this author event, because I said, you're so young to be here. And she said, well, I'm an aspiring writer.
That's right.
So, all right. I hope you're able to connect with this young lady before your name. And you had a question? Stand up and tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Regina, and I was wondering, it's so many creative people, how do you get over writer's block, or how do you overcome that, that point where you just don't know what to do?
Oh, that's good, because I have debilitating imposter syndrome. And I tell people that, they don't believe me, but I do. I doubt myself from the beginning to the end, and I write through it. That is the best, that is my advice, is just to write through it. And I think that's probably another reason why I write longhand, because I can just keep writing. Just keep writing, keep writing. So my advice is to always just kind of write through it.
And we have Mary here, the Roswell Roots Committee member.
Yes. I just found out tonight that I was born off the grid.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, my grandmother I didn't get a birth certificate until I was 50 years old.
Oh.
And the reason I got the birth certificate is because a friend of mine said, girl, you better get a birth certificate because you're not going to be able to collect your Social Security.
Oh, wow.
So my grandmother was the midwife. I was born in rural South Carolina.
Yeah.
And
most of her grandchildren, we either got delayed birth certificates or no birth certificates.
Oh, wow.
So when she would report us, if it was too late, she would change the date.
Oh.
But with me, I never got a birth certificate, so all my life, there was a piece, until 50, I carried a piece of paper with me that had my grandmother and my mother's signature that said, yes, she was born. So I don't know how I was able to, the rules weren't as strict back then as far as going to school, getting my driver's license, but it was when it was time for Social Security. So now I have to tell my cousins and my siblings, we have a new title.
Or a non-entity. That's the official term. Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Wow, a Roswell Roots member, that's a non-entity, or was anyways. You had a question here?
Hi, my name is Devyani, and I was wondering, you said you go into research and you start digging and digging. What is your favorite flowers and why?
My favorite flower now is the Cahaba lily. It is, I mean, once you see it, and especially if you see it up close, it is so beautiful. Just because it's a symbol for being so resilient. That flower should not grow the way it does, but it found a way to grow. I mean, it literally grows in water, and that's the only way. They've tried to transport it, transplant it, and put it in ground. It will not grow. It has to grow in the water, and mostly in the Cahaba River. And so that quickly became my favorite flower, just because it's so resilient, and it's beautiful too.
Okay, sir, you had a question? Tell us your name.
My name is Van Skibberler. I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not an author, but I'm an avid reader. So in high school, I went to high school, in Chicago.
Yeah.
We were required to read an African-American book once a month for the 4 years I was there. So I think I can make a suggestion on books. You are very inspiring. You're probably one of the best authors I've seen. Tell your grandmother and your mother and your dad and your grandfather that I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Of course.
My name is Vita Tucker, and I'm a writer, but I write nonfiction.
Okay.
And what I wanted to know is, it seems like you basically know the trajectory of your book when you start writing it. But do you make discoveries along the way? And what particular discoveries did you make in writing this book?
That's a good question. So my husband tells me to stop telling people this, but there's a lot of writers in this room, so you guys will understand it. I don't see scenes or people when I write, so when people ask me, who would you cast as in the, I don't see that because I hear voices. And my husband says, stop telling people that. It sounds crazy. But I hear voices, and so the characters kind of guide me. And so sometimes they'll take an unexpected turn and do something. And the character Luke, for those who've read this book, there's something that happens with Luke in this book that I did not originally plan, that he told me was going to happen to him. And I thought, okay, well, we're gonna go with that. And so that was a completely different idea. Also, there's another character named Carly that's in this book, and the direction that she decided that she was going to take was not something that I had planned on taking. So this is why I like being a pantser instead of a plotter, because if I was a plotter, that would have messed up my entire process. And so I love being open to discovery. But my process is very chaotic, so I don't recommend people use my process, but yes, I am open to that. And I think both of those examples made the book so much better.
And we have another question over here. What great boots you have, by the way. Okay. What's your name?
My name is Arlinda Brody, and I'm a journalist. I guess the last media I worked for was the AJC, but I do freelance now. But I'm a lot older than 17, but I guess I'm still an aspiring novelist. I've written or started probably, 40 novels in my lifetime and only finished one. And so I have two questions, if I may. So the first question is, when do you know that you're done? I mean, how do you finish a novel? Because I guess I'm kind of the type of person that I'm like, kind of like a, topic's going to go, oh, a squirrel. And so I move on to the next idea and kind of leave it languishing. So kind of how do you finish? And then the novel that I believe that I have finished, I'm scared because I don't know that it's good enough. I want to edit the heck out of it, but you know, my friends keep saying, just give it to somebody to, you know, to do that. Don't edit yourself, because I've been an editor, I've been a reporter, you know, and all these kind of things, and so I'm trying to wear every hat myself.
So how do I know my books are done? My character stops speaking to me. That is the fastest, that is the best way for me to know. When the characters start slowing down in my mind, that means the book is coming to an end. And it makes me sad because, like I said, these characters live with me for a long time. They literally wake me up at night. And so when they start to talk to me less and less, I know that the story is starting to end. And also when new characters introduce themselves to me, it's like, okay, I'm hearing other voices, other people. That means that this book is ending and another one is coming. And as far as if it's any good, is you have to decide that for yourself first before anything else. I mean, and you're speaking to someone who has imposter syndrome. So I struggle through, is this good enough? Is this good enough? But you have to have that peace with yourself, and you have to go back. I would recommend you put it away for a while. One of the best things I do is I put my books away for a while, and then I come back and I rediscover them. And if I'm falling in love with the language and the story, then I know that it's good.
All right, we have a lady right here.
I'm Dawn Porter, and very simple question, but I have a daughter named Lee, so I was wondering how you came up with that character name.
2 ways. Okay, so Lee told me her name was Leandra. And so my characters speak to me, but when I say they speak, they tell me their names, what they look like. And so the idea of her real name is Leandra, but of course she can't go by Leandra when she's on the run. And so I said, well, what are you going to be known as? And she says Lee. And said, that's a very simple answer. Yeah.
And for one of the gentlemen in the crew, by the way, thank you, gentlemen, who showed up today, whether you were a husband who got dragged here or one of our actual readers. Would you like to stand up and tell us your name?
My wife brought me here.
You sound like my husband now.
My name is Lonnie Crawford. You may have answered the question, why do you write? Now, before you respond, when you were describing your process, I felt a connection. Can't explain it. But when I asked you the question, why do you write? Do you write from a place of peace, a place of trauma, or whatever? I'm trying to understand where it comes from. Does that make any sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So there's 2 answers. One, I write because God tells me so. So I have a calling to write, and I've known that since I was in the 6th grade. And so, and of course I ran from it because most people that have a calling to do something, sometimes they tend to run from it because they're afraid of it. And so I write because I feel like that's what God tells me to do. So, but because of that, I feel like I have a purpose for Him to spread some awareness to stuff. So when I was praying and asking Him, what kind of writer do I need to be for you? It is to advance, to have people be seen, to help people be seen. And so all of my books feature circumstances and real life things that happen to people every day that we don't talk enough about or we don't know enough about. And so it brings me so much joy when I get emails from people who say, I feel seen. You know, my first book features and talks about a woman who conceived a child following a sexual assault. And I had so many women in my inbox saying, thank you for raising awareness to this problem. And so that's how I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, is that you all here now know about non-entities. You all know about certain areas in Alabama G-SPAN. And so I feel like I write to help people see themselves.
Wow, great question, Lonnie.
I
That
know,
was an
goodness, that was
amazing
so good.
question. All right, tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I just have a question. Would you ever have one of your books being adapted to a movie?
I can't say who's being recorded, but Long After We're Gone has been adapted, has been optioned for TV. However, Hollywood has not been the same since the strike. All 3 of my books have had a lot of interest, in being optioned. The second one is the only one that I've actually signed the contract for. Will it ever get made? I honestly doubt it, just because everything is so expensive now. But I don't write my books to be adapted or to be optioned. If that happens, that's great, but it's so rare for it to go from book to seeing it on the screen.
And I just got word from Anel, the book miser, who has said that these beautiful copies of the paperback book that are so beautifully bound with the flowers along the side, she just got another case of them delivered right now. So I'm going to be the first one in line to buy my copy. And then we have one more question here, and then I think we have, how much time we have, Judy? Okay, so this will be our last question. What is your name?
My name is Lindsay Barger.
Oh, and this is Lindsay's
Hi,
copy
Lindsay.
of the book. Sorry, I don't walk away with that.
You have your notebook there. You said
Yes.
for book 4.
Yes.
What can you share with us?
I can share that book 4, of course, this question will come from Lindsay. I know Lindsay. Lindsay has been with me for 3 books now. So book 4, you get an exclusive, Lindsay, is a standalone book to One Summer in Savannah, which was my first book. So One Summer in Savannah, for those who have not read it, tells the story of Sarah, who conceived a child following a sexual assault and had a very difficult decision to make, whether or not to allow her attacker's family into her daughter's life. And that daughter is Alana, and she is this mathematical genius. And so that book is centered around her mother, Sarah, and Jacob. But this book will be Alana's story only. And for those who have read it, you find out if she solved the equation, but also how she reacted to learning about how she was conceived.
Wow, that sounds very exciting. We're looking forward to your first book. And once again, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Mary from Roswell Roots, and I want to thank all of our Atlanta authors, staff, and personnel who are here today. I want to thank Al Stilo, and I do hope that you will register. There's still 2 or 3 more Roswell Roots events that are available to register for, including the Chicago Blues Night, which I am looking forward to Saturday night. And I want to leave you with this quote from Jesse Jackson. Mary, I hope you're hearing this. Hope is the oxygen of the soul. Breathe it deeply and pass it on. So, take that with